In this video, I'm going to talk you through the lesson plan template that we'll be using for your lesson plan portfolio. So as you can see here, we have a section at the beginning that's purple, and the rest of the lesson plan is white. So the purple section is your description of the unit. So you'll just fill this out once. And it's a chance for you to tell us what grade level you're teaching, what the content area is, what the theme of the unit is, any guiding questions that will be guiding the overarching learning goals in the unit, time frame, so how many weeks long or days long the unit is, and then a little bit about the learning context. So kind of explaining to us where the unit falls in the school year, what students have already learned before they encountered this unit, for example. From there, you will move into creating your lessons, and you'll create 3 different lessons that are sequential, as we noted in the previous video. So you'll be copying and pasting this part 3 times once you've developed your lessons. And so I'm just going to point out a few things here. Most of these are, I imagine, things you already planned for when you're writing a lesson. Again, there's a place for you to kind of give the context, explaining where it falls within the unit. We are asking for content standards and language standards, content objectives and language objectives. So thinking about both the specific content knowledge or skills that students will be developing as a result of this lesson and tying those into grade level standards, and also the language that students will need to understand the lesson, to participate fully, and or to demonstrate mastery of the content objectives. And so as you're writing these, connect them back to the WIDA language standards, and think about what is the function of language? How are students using language? What specific forms will that language take? What are the specific words, the vocabulary, or the sentence structures or genre types that they're engaging with as part of this lesson? And then domain, are you focusing mostly on reading, writing, speaking, or listening? And of course, any lesson will probably include elements of all 4 of those, but what is the real focus of language use for this lesson? Here we have a section for you to connect to cross-cultural objectives or connections. So this is where you're thinking about how you're connecting to the identities and experiences of your culturally and linguistically diverse students, and how you're incorporating perspectives of diverse perspectives and people in the lesson. I highly encourage you to check out this resource, the Learning for Justice's Social Justice Standards, as a way to guide your planning. You can include some of those standards here if you'd like, but it helps you to think about how you're connecting to students' identities and experiences and thinking about social justice in your teaching. So from there, we move into materials and resources. Please be specific. The background knowledge or skills that students need and the ways that you're going to be building or assessing that background knowledge. The language that you'll be focusing on. And here we importantly say not just vocabulary, which is important, but also any other key language. So for example, causal language, like learning the if-then structure. If you're teaching a lesson on narratives, maybe you're focusing on verbs that describe what characters do, think, and feel. If it's a math lesson, maybe students are using comparative language as they talk about bigger than, smaller than, more than, less than. So think about what other language features are students practicing or learning, and this very likely will connect back to your language objective. And here we have strategies that you're using to teach, practice, assess vocabulary, and other key language. So here, please draw from things that you've learned across your courses in TESOL and BDL. So talking about specific ways that you plan to, throughout the lesson, teach, practice, and assess language. Here we have a place for your connection back to those guiding questions or big ideas from above. The ways that you're thinking about oral language development, so giving students opportunities to use language in meaningful ways with their peers and with you. Ways that you're thinking about grouping arrangements. And for this section, it's important to think about and ensuring that you have different ways of grouping students across the lesson. So the whole lesson shouldn't just be whole class instruction, shouldn't just be independent work or pair work. So think about the ways that you're varying grouping so that your bilingual and multilingual students can be successful and can work with different types of groups to engage with the content and language. Opportunities for differentiation. So this could be focused on the materials you're using. This could be the way you're thinking about perhaps working with a smaller group of students or grouping students strategically to differentiate how they're engaging with the content. It could be differentiating the task itself, having students engage with different activities based on their English language development. So thinking about how you're planning for differentiation in this lesson. And then, of course, importantly, formative and summative assessments. So how are you assessing what students are learning or have learned as a result of this lesson? And then below, we've provided just kind of a basic lesson sequence that we encourage you to use that follows a scaffolded approach of I do, we do, you do together, you do independently. And it begins by hooking students into the lesson, introducing the objectives, connecting the material to their previous experiences or the previous lessons, presenting the new concepts, and thinking about the strategies you're using for that, giving students a chance to practice doing something together with their peers. So practicing engaging with the content learning skills or language learning and skills in a way that is really promoting student engagement and participation, and thinking about the feedback you're giving to them as they're doing that. And then finally, review and assessment. So what might students do then independently as a way for you to see what they've learned as a result of the lesson? And there's some ideas there of what that might look like. And then finally, for differentiation and to help you think about differentiating, we have an adapted version of a WIDA MPI strand here. You can find many examples of those if you click on this 2012 WIDA MPI strand link. And here you're thinking about what students at all levels of English language proficiency are doing, what your expectation is in terms of content goal, or what we also sometimes calls cognitive function, what the focus domain is for that work, and then how you would differentiate that for students who are at entering and emerging levels of English language development, developing levels of English language development, and expanding and bridging levels of English language development. So for example, if I wanted all of my students, students at all levels of English language proficiency, to be able to explain the process of photosynthesis, I might differentiate what I'm asking students to do as part of the activity. So maybe the focal domain here would be writing, and for my entering and emerging students, I might have them, I might give them an image of a plant and have them label the plant using single words to show that they understand the process. So label and sequence an image of a plant demonstrating the process of a photosynthesis. For my students who are developing, I might ask them to do the same activity, but with full sentences. So write one sentence and sequence a diagram of a plant to show, to explain the process of photosynthesis. And then for my students who are expanding and bridging, I might have them write a short paragraph using complete sentences that explains the process of photosynthesis using a labeled diagram of a plant to support their explanation. So this is thinking about how you're differentiating for language, but keeping the goal the same for all students. All students in that example are able to explain how photosynthesis works. They're just using different amounts of language and different resources to be able to do that. So that is what we're looking for in your lessons. And again, you'll have 3 of these, and then the one purple box that frames the lessons and how they fit within the unit. And the goal here is to have 3 sequential lessons so we can get a sense for how you're planning across a unit, not just within one lesson, but thinking about scaffolding and supporting students as you move across a unit of instruction. So that is it. We look forward to seeing your lesson plan portfolios.